Some might say we're a good influence. Some might say that we're a bad influence. I like to think we're good influence in causing everyone to reach for their best behavior, their best selves, and really to improve their team and themselves as fantasy owners. And I feel like we did that last night. We really got people back into the swing of things. We talked about, where things ended last year, started a little bit of a preview for where things were going for next year, and then started talking about some trades that went down or could go down or things like that. And in the next 24 hours, a lot of substantial trades actually happened. So we said we were probably going to do a couple of shows this week. People rewarded us with a good showing after last night's pod, so we're back again tonight. You've got the Vikings and the Eagles. We'll see if anyone else decides to jump on as we go, but we're going to keep it going here and get the momentum going, just like you guys did with the with some fun trades. So we'll start talking about 2026 previews. Looking at some of the teams who have set themselves up quite well for the offseason and those who still have some stuff to do. And when we get tired of talking about teams and what they should be doing, we'll talk about some trades and we'll see if we can make some more trouble again tonight. What do you say, Bill? Oh, sorry, RJ.
I'm just here to be an influence, whether good or bad. I want everybody to be the biggest heathens that they can be, especially in this league.
Hey, absolutely. Strive for improvement. That's always what we're looking for here. So we like to think it's good behavior. But, anyways, talking about good behavior, let's talk about the person who went above and beyond on everything this year. Um, it's rare that you find an unbreakable record or a record that's going to be very difficult to break, and somebody who really dedicates themselves to the process of taking that record, breaking it, and setting it such that it's probably unbreakable again. And hats off go to the Broncos for doing that this year. Had a goal of getting under 100 points at one point during the year. Obviously, with our punter and kicker situation, that's really not possible. But 436 is pretty tough to beat going forward here. So, took the low point that you had last when you tanked probably the best that you had ever done, RJ, and took it to the next level. So bravo, Bill, for everything you did there. So I think we'll go ahead and start with the Broncos for what they're set up for next year. So I think we started talking about the draft capital last night. RJ, do you want to go through some of what he's got on the agenda for this offseason?
Sure. Well, I'd imagine we'll probably see another year very similar to what Broncos is doing. I think he's made it pretty public that he is very smitten with the 2027 draft class. So we'll probably see some moves for that. One thing I do want to mention and commend him for is he has some pretty decent players for going 0-17 and only putting up 4 points or 400 points. I know a lot of these guys were injured and things like that, but it's nice to go into the offseason with some noteworthy names on the team other than just draft capital. But like we said, draft capital, we'll go to that right now. I believe he has 4 picks in the first round this year.
Yeah, he's got his pick, which is first overall. He's got the Jets pick, which is 24. He's got the Buccaneers pick, which is 11. And he's got the Panthers pick, which is 18. So 1, 11, 18, and 24. So it's spread throughout the round there to be able to not be too far from any position or player as things proceed. It's a question I'd say of his draft capital is definitely more concentrated for next year. So it is a question of does he try and recycle the capital he has this year into next year? Does he start bringing some of that forward in this year and potentially buy on a down market? A lot of options that he has for this team.
Yep. And he has 9 first-round picks next year. So he's pretty well set up for 2027. I could probably see a little bit of moving around, maybe moving some of makes a couple of picks, doesn't find anybody that he deems worthy of that like late teens pick, maybe move off of that for a middling, a potential playoff team's pick in 2027. I could see something like that. I don't know how many people are going to be super eager to, go out and try to buy a 2026 pick with a 2027 pick. But if anybody is in the market to do it, I think Bill is probably the one person you can talk to. As you said, he has picks, somewhere in the first round in a couple of different places. So you'll definitely get the position that you want or around about that.
Yeah, and like you said, he's added some solid, I'll call them building blocks between Kalijah Cansey, Matabuki, and Kyle Hamilton. He's got some good defensive pieces to build from. There's definitely, I'll call it, some intrigue around what happens with Deshaun Watson this offseason. They're getting near the end of that suicidal contract that the Browns signed with him. But if he is healthy going in next year, it's a question of what happens, what do they do, where does he go, or is he on a different team next year and free of that situation? So, I mean, a lot of things that could still happen there, but that's definitely a question mark. And then I'd say Hooker, we can go ahead and call him a full-on miss for me at this point. We'll see if he catches on anywhere. And then Will Levis is obviously the backup for Cam Ward. I would imagine he talks to management this year and asks for a buyout, see if he can catch on elsewhere. But, besides that, I mean, obviously the Dallas plays kicker, truly the best player on this roster.
Yeah, the Will Levis one's going to be interesting because if I'm not mistaken, he was injured throughout the majority of the season and off season. So I don't think there were many opportunities for them to move him last year, like being healthy and being able to move him. So I'm interested to see what type of market he has this year. If all of the quarterbacks besides Mendoza decide to go back to school, which it looks like that for the most part, I could see another Sam Darnold type of scenario happen with Will Levis. And I'd imagine we'll probably mention that with a couple other backups around the league. But this is, with the rise of NIL, it's very real that some teams may just not have a quarterback to draft or, one that they don't perceive as worthy to start in the NFL.
Well, I mean, I think obviously the 49ers have kind of king-made the last couple of years with Darnold a couple of years back. It's looking like Mac Jones is going to be a commodity this offseason as another backup for them. So I would imagine there's going to be folks like the internet's already got some folks suggested. Zach Wilson was one of the, hey, bring him in and see if the sprinkling of Shanahan's magic can turn him into a viable quarterback in this league. Because, that's the thing. Darnold was on that team a couple years back and goes to Minnesota, succeeds there, goes to Seattle and just beat the shit out of us last weekend. So, very much a thank you for reviving my career. Now get the fuck out of my way situation. I'm sure there's plenty of others like that. So, wouldn't be shocking to hear Levis catch on in some of those situations, especially with some bright offensive minds changing area codes this year.
Yep, completely agree.
Plus, the development of quarterbacks is not as much of a, I even say exact science as it used to be when it was very much not one. But these days, it definitely seems like with the way college game is being done, quarterbacks are coming in the league with less of a, call it, understanding and mastery of the position that they need. So they need even more time to be ready for it. Anyways, out of the cornfield here. So Bill's got picks. Bill's got a couple players. Bill is building. It's not just a question for the Broncos of are they going to start trying to actually win a game in 2026, or are they going to be full on tank mode again, and any things bought are going to be more towards the, well, develop through 26, keep the score low in 26, and then really push it in 27. I don't know. I guess we'll just have to see.
Yeah, that's definitely what I see happening.
All right, let's keep it in division here. We'll jump over from the last place Broncos to the second and last place Chargers. Definitely a team that surprised a lot of folks to start the year this year. A bit of a probably weaker schedule than many had thought, but he had built his team sort of without draft capital, but instead give me young players that if they play well, cool. If they don't play well, they're building and they just need some time, but didn't necessarily have his pick at the start of the process. So no, skin off of his head if it's a problem or these guys actually win a few games. And he did. Finished 8-9, almost 500 on the year. And just kind of going through the team, Bryce Young, not a great fantasy year, but definitely played better than I think folks thought he would after a bit of a rough start. Adonai Mitchell really getting a second life with the Jets. We'll see if that continues next year with Garrett Wilson back and probably a new quarterback in that regime. A couple of Byron Murphy and Eric Armstead, young to middle-aged defensive tackles. Really the big thing here, and of course Nakobe Dean on a couple of high-scoring linebackers. The big value on this team is the IR. Jonathan Brooks coming back from his second ACL. He should be ready for next season. Garrett Wilson, obviously. Eric All, Sam Laporta, Will McDonald, Dietrich Wise. The rest are, I'd say, more middle-of-the-road players, but definitely some players on this roster. Plus, has 2 first-rounders next year, his and Seahawks, which I think comes out to his being the 14 and the Seahawks being 28. So 2 firsts to play with, and then some late round picks. So, he could, if he wants to, just kind of roll over the draft picks into 27 and build with the youth that he has. He should have a pretty good amount of cap space too, based off of 44 million already and 54 in dead cap. I'm not sure how much is already reserved for next year. I need to pull that up, but he's going to have cap space. He's going to have some picks. He's going to have some good young players. He's taking the step in the right direction.
Yeah. I agree with the statement on maybe moving off of those picks for future picks. The team's already pretty well built. Of course, you can never have an overabundance of talent, but yeah, he already has the high scoring players filling out the roster with depth pieces. The ones that he already has are fantastic. Carl Brooks, Yaya on DT. I'd imagine both of those players will be doing more productive things next year. The vast majority of his team is all players that you can pretty much expect to be in the mid hundreds next year at the very worst. Other than 2 non-Rodriguez running backs. But yeah, if he's the type of guy to go out, move his first round pick for another first round pick a year later, and maybe get some type of useful veteran. I was going to say a Justice Hill type that is expensive and mildly productive. He already has Justice Hill on his team, but something of the sort. He does that a couple of times with his first round picks, and this team's ready to go for next season. As long, barring people keeping their jobs and things like that.
No, it's true. Just kind of looking across the team for moves that I'd like to see him make. I think having both Mitchell and Wilson's an interesting idea. Um, Wilson obviously is a pretty insulated value at this point. You can always get good value for him. Um, but having him and Mitchell, you really hope that whatever the Jets do, they start doing something to try and address the quarterback position. Um, I don't know if Fields is signed there next year. I think he might have an option. I don't know what the dead cap is on that. But it's a kind of a question of you've got a start of a nice looking stack there. It's a question of do you zig and so one of Mitchell or Wilson so that you don't have the stack, or do you zag and say, hey, I've got Sam Laporta. He's pretty highly regarded. Let me go back to the person who owned him before the great redistributor me acquired him, the Cardinals, and say, hey, Mason Taylor would look pretty good for me to kind of keep building my stack here. See if I can get a little juice on top of Taylor for Sam Laporta. Could be a fun trade to try and start with. And then there's been a couple of other injured players that I would be surprised if Chargers wasn't checking in on. Like I saw Tampa has Zach Charbonnet up on his trade bait right now. Just got hurt. I think it was it his ACL in this divisional game that he busted?
I am not 100% sure. Who did you say has him?
The Buccaneers have him on their trade bait, but he just, I think, injured his ACL in this last game against the 49ers. So he is out for the foreseeable future. So it's kind of a, hey, if I'm collecting injured players and they're coming back when they're coming back, and that's the mantra I want to build with, then that's what he could continue doing. He would be a good add to this team. And Buccaneers is trying to kind of rebuild his way, trying to see if there are any, I'll call them, interesting Tennessee Titans on the team because they know that's the Buccaneers team. It wouldn't be a bad way to start a conversation. But he's also got a lot of good developing talent here. But it may be hard for him to get a player for player, but he definitely has picks that he can be using to go buy a couple of things. Maybe it'll be next year's second that I think he has for 27. Yeah, he has the Bears second next year. So maybe it's Bears second next year for Charbonnet or something like that. Could be a starting point here.
Yeah.
Charbonnet
tore his ACL. So that's going to be an extended absence, I'd imagine. Which, to your point, may be the right time to purchase somebody like that, especially if we're going with middling type of running backs. But no, I would just emphasize I think that is the right type of player for Chargers. So he's not exhausting any more resources. Just go out and get a whole bunch of RB2s.
Well, yeah, and again, get these things on the cheap, and it's not. Brooks he was able to get especially cheap. I think you remember because it was right after he injured the same knee multiple times now. So that doesn't have a great track record, but has some optionality there. So, anyways, some ideas for Chargers. Let's go to playoff teams in this division. Start with the Raiders. So just kind of hitting the high level here. Lamar was, of course, MVP level last year in terms of his performance. This year, not so much. Ended the season, I believe, on the IR. So Raiders took the opportunity to renegotiate him based off that performance and drop his price tag substantially. Hit draft gold with Cam Scatterboo and Woody Marks in terms of his running back room. Both are looking like they're going to be ready for a solid year next year. Amon-Ra as a nice start, but the rest still filling in on his receiving core. Ingram a bit of a miss, but then sort of a middling defense. Max Crosby obviously stud. The rest just kind of filling in on a week-to-week basis. Nothing really to write home about. But Nonetheless, he's got a really good offense to start with and made the playoffs on the strength of that offense. I guess the question now becomes, what do you do with this team? You've got some great young rookie contracts. You've got $27 million in 6 years this year, to pick up a couple more things and prepare yourself for next year. Um, do you break things up? Do you try and go get another piece? Do you take the young running backs that you're talking about here? I just mentioned Marks, Scadaboo, and see, hey, can I go procure someone stealthy with that? Like, what's the way forward here?
So my approach would be an interesting one to this, and it'll take a long-winded explanation, but I would sit with this team and I would just try to improve kind of around the edges, bolster a little bit of depth, things like that. This team turned out really well compared to last year, but I would use this one as like a cautionary tale of this is the best case scenario. So, like, I remember when we were throughout the majority of the off season last year, and even some bit of the early stages of the season, uh, the one thing we were critical about was like improving running backs. And I'm not going to say that the Raiders went out and really improved their running backs. I think you might have gotten Tajay Spears uh, after we had discussed it. But this is the best case scenario because if you would have asked us in the offseason, none of these guys were going to be super productive. He still got, 400 or 500 points out of his running backs. Um, but that's not always going to happen. Very few times does the RB4 end up putting up 87 points on a team. Very rarely do you end up hitting on two like mid-round running backs, or at least where they were drafted mid-round. Um, you know, Singletary, he may recreate that 100 points, but is Tajay gonna go back to that? I think all of these particular players are going to do well. So now, if we're talking specifically about Raiders, like I said, just go again. Maybe improve the depth, but I would say continuously try to improve. Very, very rarely are you going to pull four, you know, budget type of running backs out and all of them be super productive in best ball. So I would be weary of that.
Yeah, I think I fully agree with the patient approach here. And I think the only spot I might vary is I might be interested in breaking down one stud. And again, that's not like a take, anyone who's making more than, seven figures and sell them. But I think a lower price tag Lamar, I would be interested in kind of seeing what the market held for him right now. I know I just, traded a big name quarterback recently, and some felt underwhelming about what I got back. But considering he has a bit of a on year off year type situation and is a true game changer in fantasy when he's on, might be interesting to kind of see what that price tag is right now. Same kind of thing with Amon Ra. Jameson Williams is fully, stepped into the role as a number two there and really producing in his own right. Isaac Tesla had some moments of brilliance there. Jahmyr Gibbs is a true alpha back, one of the few in the league. So there's a lot of targets going different places in that offense. Is it time to sell based off the name? Whereas Amon-Ra, just the way he plays the game, is always just going to get fed. You know, over 100 receptions on 160 targets is not something you see in this league. Usually you're up in the 180 to 200 target range to get that level of receptions. But because Amon-Ra is so efficient, and 4 straight Pro Bowls, if you're ever going to get off them, sometimes you want to be a year early versus a year late. Now's the time to do it. He could be an interesting one. And then, Max Crosby. He's one that the Raiders decided to put on IR at the end of the season, and he was so thrilled about it. He was posting videos of him and his son on the trampoline, playing basketball, lifting weights, and all sorts of things. See if he could get back at his team a little bit there. But look, I mean, he is still in his 20s, still a huge difference maker at the position. And is still one of the better value contracts in the league. And again, Pro Bowl 3 of the last 4 years. And if you're going to, fill in some of the gaps you have with some of the contract and space flexibility you have, moving one of those guys is, probably the right time to do it. But don't break everything down, because if you do, you're going to run out of that space, and you don't need to hit in a lot of places to get to where you need to go to. You need to break some stuff down and hit like a 2-for-1 or 3-for-1 in these deals, and you're in good shape. But don't get too aggressive with it. I know this is usually where you do some kind of sanity check or welfare check on me, because I'm telling people not to get crazy with their trades. Don't worry, I'm still okay.
No, I think that's that is very well said. But I will say that a lot of 2-for-1s and 3-for-1s, you're going to be. I mean, I don't think he'd be able to hunt those out and break his team down efficiently. Like you will perpetually just be looking for those 2-for-1s and 3-for-1s. There's not a lot of them out there, so it's just do the legwork, find those. Don't do anything else.
Yeah, but I mean, there's plenty of teams out there right now who spent a lot of draft capital on picks last year and need to consolidate either contracts or years or otherwise. So if you've got flexibility and you've got some of those names, you are in a power position in terms of making trades right now. So,
Oh yeah, I just mean there's a finite of those opportunities out there. Like if he's trying to break down all of his good players into 2-for-1s and 3-for-1s, there will be fewer and fewer of those opportunities as he goes through the roster.
Yep. All right, so we'll circle to the Chiefs to round out the division. And you know what? It's a maturing as a fantasy player for me, I feel, whenever I look at a Goose roster. Whereas back in my early days when I was, just getting into dynasty football and best ball and leagues like this, I'd look at a roster like Goose's and be like, oh my God, this team is terrible. How's he even compete? He doesn't have any starters. He's just got backups all over the place. Like, none of these guys are putting up high point totals. Like, this is ridiculous. This team is terrible. He got lucky. Like, there's no way this team is going places. To the point where this year I may have gone a little over my skis and I think picked Goose to win it all. So apologies for the curse, my good man. But it is just, it's fun for me to sit there and look at a Goose team and just kind of smile. Like, you go to a casual fantasy player and say, man, this is a pretty good team here. He's got Jared Goff, the quarterback, again, well known, but then Taj Brooks, Blake Corum, Roschon Johnson, Jeremy McNichols, Ramondre Stevenson, and Jalen Warren. You go and tell somebody that at the beginning of the season, it's like, I mean, Warren's not bad, but Stevenson's losing his job, and Corum can't overtake Williams. I mean, this team's terrible. But you had 3 guys in triple digits on that running back squad. And I bet if I look at the positional performances, he's in the top 10 at running backs. Again, it's just fun to see how Goose puts it together. So he's already been active in the offseason, continuing to do so again, and lock some of these guys down. But again, he will continue to rotate this roster, but he's still sitting there with $31 million in cap room and points all over his roster. That's why, again, he won his division this year, and one of those where you keep seeing, okay, hey, this guy's playing really well in the playoffs. I wonder what team he's on. Oh, Michael Jackson. Yeah, he was shutting everyone down. He's on the Chiefs. Or, hey, this guy really stepped up and had a great game this year. Oh, he's on the Chiefs. So I won't be surprised if Goose continues trading on some of that hype in the postseason. At this point, it's just kind of circling the way he does. I won't try and prognosticate on how he does it, because if I could do it, I would do it, and I'd have better performances in my teams. So I think obviously he knows where he needs to move off some things. He's I think played some his tags out already, but pretty much everything on his roster is, hey, I'm kind of interested to see what happens to this guy in the offseason.
Yeah, this is an interesting roster. I wasn't a fan of it going into the season. There's bits and pieces of it that I am a huge fan of. Still can't say that I'm personally thrilled about it, but he like what did he went 12-5. Like
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like he won consistently. He had fantastic players, fantastic depth. He may be the reason why we have to tell the rest of the league they need to improve on their depth, because he has all the depth pieces, but I don't think he really has any of the like superstars, which that's a fantastic way to build a team. Yeah, just whenever you look at it, you're like, no, this is a middle of the road, fringe playoff team, but it's not. It's a legit team. He knows what he's doing, so I don't. Just like you, I don't have any pointers or anything like this. It is a collection of players that I would not feel great about having. But he did far better than me. So who am I to talk?
And I'll say, just picking out a couple names, I'm interested to see what happens to them this offseason. Receivers an easy place to start. Alec Pierce and Christian Watson have some real life decisions and stuff coming up here. Will be interesting to see what ends up happening to them in their particular situations. Samson Ekubom on defensive end is one that has been consistently scoring points for Goose. Had some injuries this year, so missed the good part of the season. Is 30. Is he going to bounce back? And can that contract be as good as it's been? And then, some folks that have already gotten their walking papers. Trayvon Diggs has been a big name. He just got cut by the Packers. What happens with him next? So I'd say a couple of these players, like I said, I think get rotated out. I think he will capitalize on big news if, say, Pierce signs a big contract this offseason with like the 49ers or somebody who's receiver needy. I think he'll capitalize on that and use that to fill in some other spots. But he always likes to have one or two big price tagged free agents just to kind of help eat up that cap on the other side of his roster building process. All right. Ship over to the East. Miami Dolphins. The man who loves the draft almost as much as I do. And no, he's probably even more than I do. Let's be honest at this point. Has had a pretty interesting collection of picks the last couple of years and built out his team pretty well as a result. Quarterbacks, Jackson Dart, held on to him, and he's in a great position going into the offseason. Quinn Ewers had a bit of a tryout, and we'll see what he gets next year. Trevion had moments, still 200 points despite challenges getting the volume that he would want, but again, a great building piece. Luther Burden, obviously a favorite of mine, has already traded to tag Mike Evans and has him locked up for next year. Colston Loveland, looking like a pretty solid addition at the tight end spot. And then right now, again, he's got a pretty full roster because of all these rookie contracts that he's had to build around. But also looking quite good at the linebacker position, 220-plus point linebackers between Carson Spiesinger, who was, I think, up for Defensive Rookie of the Year for the Browns, and Devin White, really reviving his career in Vegas. Only 27 years old, so may have a opportunity to continue there, but really seized the role in Vegas, and at just under $9 million, a nice building block piece there for him. So I know he has some draft capital this year that he'll continue filling things in. I know when I've tried to trade with him in the past, he's always kind of shied away from it, saying he kind of enjoys it being a low touch and low stress league for him. But at some point, he's going to collect enough talent that he's going to have to pay a little bit more attention.
Yeah. I think this is a fantastic roster that is primed to improve over the next probably year or two. Um, I haven't looked at his treasure chest of picks. Is he also extended into? No, he's not too extended into 2027. Um,
So I think he's got his pick and my pick are his two main ones in the first. Yeah. And those are quite good. His is 8 minus 3. So he's got two top 10 picks, one of them top 5 to start with. I think he got that my pick from Penix deal with the Colts. But, he's going to pick up probably about 20 to 30 years once we get rollover. So he doesn't need a lot of picks this year. Right now he's looking at, yeah, holy shit. He's got some consolidating to do. He's got a problem.
yeah, I definitely think he's one of those that's in a spot where he needs to be very conscious of like what he's like trading for or acquiring. I also think he just needs to trim his roster, find other people that are willing to gamble on the players like a Ty Hamilton or you know have some optimism for Traylon Burks. That's not much. It's a 1 year deal, but somebody that may be fond of Jarquez Hunter, because like those, they're just clogging his roster at this point. Like with the next set of draft and things like that, he has enough draft capital to where he can be like it's cut and dry. Like were they productive this year? Did they hit? You know, to a certain extent, were they a hit? If not, just like get rid of them. Try to find somebody that's gonna take them. If not, just cut bait, get rid of them. Because like the 4 years for players that are putting up 0 points, like no, he's gonna have a whole new group of them this year that he gets to you know root through. So yeah, he just I don't know. Is this a roster that almost has too much draft capital?
Well, it does. I mean, he's got the two first, which are great. He's got 7 second-round picks. I think I'm seeing 9 third-round picks, 9 fourth-round picks, and 6 fifth-round picks. So obviously, you can't make all of those picks at this point. Some of it's going to have to be consolidated. I know he'll try and move it into 2027, where he only has his picks and then 2/3 and a fourth right now. So I think there's a hope that he'll be able to roll it over either during this period of time or during the draft. But really, it's time to go shopping, and that's what we've been asking for this team to do for a while. But he's got the quarterback, he's got his RB1, he's got an emerging wide receiver in Burden, and one who has really established himself with Evans, and coming off of a midseason injury, should be in good health to start the season next year. He's got his tight end, and he's got a couple of interesting defensive pieces. So I wouldn't necessarily be using the capital to go buy, defensive pieces at this point in the year. That's usually not a great investment. Um, but there's enough on kind of the stud side of things right now where he's got the cap space and he will have more over the rollover, and he's got the picks. Like he can make like the trades of the second and a fourth for Roquan Smith. He can go get the Devontae Adams for a third and some players. Not necessarily those players, but rewind it 2 or 3 years, and that's the stuff you would go do. Like again, just kind of throw it out there. If Amon Ra is available, do you trade, my first and second round pick with, I don't know, something else to go get him? Who says no in that situation? I get now Amon Ra, Luther Burden, and Mike Evans as my 3 receivers. That's a pretty solid receiving core to build around, and not necessarily too old either. And if I'm Raiders, I've just moved off one of those pieces, and I have a top 3 pick to use to replenish it in a draft where you kind of need to be in that top 3 if you want to get one of those, either the top receiver, Love, or Mendoza. So could be a win-win for him in that regard. But again, he's got to pick the right targets and start moving while the iron's hot.
Yeah, this is definitely the time where you want to be lucky. And regardless if you do a rebuild slash retooling over the course of one off season, or if you do it over an extended period of time, you're always going to come to this point where you have the marquee offensive players that you would like to start a roster with, but there's too much gray area in defense, especially this time of year. So, like, Dolphins is a conundrum of, like, do you just take defensive players? Do you go buy defensive players with those draft picks and just hope that they keep their jobs and they maintain production, for the next season? And it's really like it's you have to hope to get lucky with whichever decision you make. I don't think there's a wrong one or necessarily a right one either. It's just, if there's a time to get lucky, this is when you want to be. Buying the particular linebackers to flesh out your team, everything like that. So,
yeah. All right, let's move over to the Bills. So again, building team, some really great picks that I thought were really going to elevate him and launch him ahead of schedule. Ended up going 5-12 this year, so a bit ahead of schedule, but not as fast as I think I was giving him credit for to start. Jalen Milroe never really got on the field, but is very intriguing prospect. Sam Darnold had a pretty good year ahead of him, so his path is a little bit more blocked than people thought it would be. But again, Eric's not in any kind of hurry there. Dylan Sampson got on the field when he did well when he had the opportunity. He looks like he's going to stay in some kind of rotational role in Cleveland, so he's a productive player. Elik Ayamanor had his flashes. Luke McCaffrey was a pretty valuable piece until he got hurt. Jalen Noel had his flashes. So, and then obviously Tyler Warren. So his offense, he's got a lot of the I'll call it depth pieces figured out. He just needs to kind of figure out those 10 poles besides I'll call it Tyler Warren on offense. And then defense. It's pretty too much too soon to tell for a lot of these. Nick Martin really didn't have a great opportunity to flash in San Francisco because he was hurt. Kenny Clark had his moments, but then really never established himself the way he wanted to in Dallas. Having a full offseason with a healthy Quinnen probably will help things for him going forward, but will set him up well for next year. He just has good building blocks all over the roster, but lacks that top end talent that a team that's, if you're not Goose, you really need to differentiate yourself. And again, he'll have plenty of cap space next year. He's got Zacchaeus expiring at $23.5 million. He's got $103 million in cap penalties right now, and $25 million in terms of cap space on top of that. So he'll continue probably taking on some cap dumps for some people to pick up some more draft capital. If we look at what his picks look like for next year, he's got 4 first rounders. He's got he's got Pats, he's got Raiders, and he's got Commanders. His is 10. Pats is 17, Commanders is 27, and Raiders is 22. So middle of the first round stuff. But, it could be fun to see what he does here. If he decides he wants to maybe jump ahead of Dolphins in the queue, he could take those 4 first and probably get those 10 post, talents that I'm talking about and be ready to go next year. Go, just with the 4 picks, go buy a quarterback, go buy a running back, and then go buy some defense, and bing, bang, boom, he might win the division. especially with some of the challenges that Jets looks like he's having after a bit of a tough end of the season and some, I'll call it positional questions. Um, I'll say that Jets has had a very good record the last few years, but hasn't had a lot of competition in the division. Um, the Bills could be in a very interesting spot next year to start giving him some of that run for his money.
I'd like to see that. I think the Bills, like good type of build and the correct owner. And I think you hit it right on the head with going out and buying those like marquee tentpole type of players. Bills is good with finding the less identifiable productive players. You know, he held on to Rico Dowdle for forever, and eventually he did become productive. So I can definitely see him doing that again with a couple other players. So I would, you know, get the studs and then just trust your assessment process in finding the depth pieces.
Well, and again, I know it's early on in the draft cycle too, and people's um, players will emerge in this process. But as someone who has had a lot of success scouting well, this may be the kind of draft where he says, "Yeah, just give me the underpriced picks in this draft, and let me build through the draft continuously because I can find the talent. I'm good at that, and it's going to be a hell of a lot cheaper for me to do it that way than trying to buy some things." Now, obviously, a little bit more risky doing it through the draft than going to buy an established vet, but we're playing fantasy football for $30 a month a year here. Like this is not going to break anybody or cause anybody to be in a bad situation. So
Yeah.
sometimes just having a little bit of fun is not the worst thing.
I don't hate that idea either. From that same sense, like you can tell just by Bill's picks, year in year out. He doesn't get cute with the draft picks. He takes the guys that are expected to be productive. The Warrens, the Luther Burdens. Like he's not taking the guy that's just recently climbing up draft boards. He's taking the guy that's has been expected to go there for multiple years.
Yeah, I mean, and there's something to be said for that. Those of us who fall in love with, oh, he's 6'5" and can run a 4.3 and this stuff, but he only had 3 sacks in college. It's like, well, if he's got those measurables, why didn't he have more than 3 sacks in college? Good question, guys.
Yep.
And
he
stays away from those, but we don't.
No, yeah, there are some owners that get swayed by those things. I am also one of those. I like to make the interesting pick. I don't like the boring ones, but typically the boring ones are the ones that pay off more often than not.
This is true. All right. Speaking of interesting picks and interesting players, and frankly, interesting moves, nothing is more interesting, I say, than the Patriots, especially when he gets going. Brian loves to make the trades, loves to acquire picks, loves to trade picks, loves to acquire young players, trade young players, acquire underpriced veterans, try and trade those veterans. He is always doing something, which makes him a lot of fun to have in this league. He's been trying to relocate Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson since he got them from me. Now I'm allowed to buy them back, and I will be interested in doing so once I make a few more trades, probably. But he's got that as a nice piece to trade from or build around. Looks like Jones is obviously a priority for the Colts, so he's a little bit, I'd say, a nice cheap addition as a starting quarterback for him to start with. I'll hit some of the other high-level players here. Jaden Higgins really set himself outside as the alpha in that passing offense when Nico's been out. So it'll be interesting to see how things sort of go in a pecking order going forward there. But he definitely seems to have a place in that offense. Chig has been solid, and Gunner really exceeded expectations for your tight ends in Tennessee. Still waiting as an offensive coordinator, but just signed Robert Saleh. So Wouldn't be shocked to see success at that position continue. And then he's got really young defensive players. Mason Graham, Chris Jenkins is the Ohio boys on defensive tackle. Jalen Phillips, I think, is a free agent this year, where he signs will really have a big impact on his value. But again, a $10 million price tag is not a bad thing to have. And then his back seven is not too pricey and pretty productive. So about 20 million still left in cap space, 14 years in terms of contract years. Don't think he has much in the draft capital perspective right now. He has the Chiefs first for 26, and I think he's trying to break down further. I think he said that was what, 125? Yep. So I think he's trying to break that down further, and we'll see what happens with that. But one thing we know for certain is if I'm going to place a bet that's not me on somebody completely trading out and turning over their roster, it's these Patriots.
Yep, he can squeeze value out of anything. He can go from like zero perceivable assets to 15 first-round picks in a matter of weeks, just by making the right moves. So I definitely expect him to continue in the positive. I am intrigued to see what will happen with his quarterback situation. I'd imagine he moves off of that package, and whatever it is, whatever value he extracts out of it is going to go purchase his next quarterback, which I think is a fine move. Yeah, the rest of the team is good. He has a good group of like young wide receivers. Like most of us, he's lacking at running back, but that's just because we aren't very optimistic about any running back from year to year, similar to most defensive positions. Tight end is fantastic. Having both of the Tennessee tight ends is awesome. If one of them moves, I think Chig signed an extension last year, so I don't think that either one of them's going anywhere. But if that does happen, they're both extremely talented tight ends that'll end up being a starter elsewhere. Defensive side of the ball is really good. Starting to get up there in age as far as like, I don't know, how old is Hassan Reddick at this point? 31. He's still productive. He's definitely taking like the Jadeveon Clowney type of role of just, I'll play for fringe playoff teams whenever I feel like it. Linebackers are solid. So this is definitely one of those. You said he had one first round pick?
Yeah, 125, I think.
Yeah. I think he takes the quarterbacks, moves into a quarterback he feels a little bit more confident with, and then that first round pick is perfect to break down, maybe snag himself another like depth running back, maybe two of them, and this roster is ready to go out and compete for the division.
Yeah.
I think he would have done a lot better, like just the Daniel Jones stuff, and like just a string of bad luck at the wrong time. But I definitely think Patriots was better than like the 9-8 record that it said.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's box, and now it's a question of I could see him kind of bringing some things down and saying, "Hey, next year might not be my year," and let others kind of jump in and him come behind, or he could say, "Screw it, I'm going next year too."
Yeah, nothing wrong with taking a shot. Does he have his 27 first, or has he moved that?
I don't think so, and unfortunately, just because of the way that he fluctuates, folks don't really move off of his picks. So
yeah, I'm a fan of just running it back with a very similar roster. I think if he does, he will have a lot better outcome than he did this year.
Yeah, I would. Let's do the Jets and then let's pause there and start talking about some of these trades that have gone down already and what else should be going down.
Yeah.
Just shooting the shit here, but it's just the two of us. And we need to get to some other content here and get some other voices in the conversation. So it's not just the two of us talking about our favorite teams in the AFC. Jets. So I'll give Jets a lot of credit. They were one of the few teams that really went out and acquired at the deadline to round out the team. Stroud has been a cornerstone for him. I think he actually traded Garrett Wilson potentially to go get him. So he's been a piece for him the last couple of years at quarterback. Taylor was a stud for the better part of the year. Unfortunately, as things broke down with Daniel Jones, things kind of broke down for Taylor, but still almost 350 points, pretty solid year. But again, went buying, got Kamara from you, got Stephon Diggs from you. Between Diggs with 200 points and Jameis Williams and KaVontae Turpin with 200 points, he had the offensive firepower he needed, despite the loss of George Kittle. Obviously, that was later in the year, but Freiermuth and Kittle at tight end were quite solid. And then really led by his defense, Jack Campbell at linebacker and Will Anderson at D end. Pretty complete team. Reason he won the division. Problem's going to be for him. Some of these things are going to start getting pretty expensive. Taylor is is over $20 million to start. Kamara had a bit of a tough year, and it's tough to expect Taylor to go back to back, so he's going to have to go find another running back. Stroud's going to start getting expensive after this year. So his extension, but because of his playoff performance, I don't know. He may not feel super comfortable just having Stroud as his only option. I know Davis Mills right behind him gives him who the quote heir apparent might be. Wouldn't be surprised to see Houston go add a quarterback, which changes the makeup here. Shouldn't be too expensive for Jets to go by, but just one more thing. We were talking about the Pats last night. Diggs, good season there. A lot of targets, so not sure if 200 points is going to continue to be in his future there, but they seem like a pretty good match going forward. Turpin, 20 million. So if he walks, I think there's a comp pick involved, which is helpful for the Jets, but that's still 200 points you have to find a way to replace. So bit of a tough decision. And then, of course, Will Anderson is going to do his fifth-year option next year, and some of these contracts are going to start running due. So he's coming up to that point that Lions faced this year, where he had a lot of really cheap, really cost-controlled players that were due contracts. He doesn't have a lot of cap space this year to go do it, and next year he's going to have to owe a lot of money to these guys. So he's going to have to start figuring out how to get economical with the other parts of his roster, so he has space to extend his cornerstone players. And then from a cap perspective, all he has is his 27th still. So it's going to take a little bit of creativity.
I will say, looking at the Jets roster, I do find it hilarious that we talked about returners all this year, and Chimere DK was the shining example of like what was wrong with returners. But because KaVontae Turpin has done this before in previous seasons, I think a lot of us just ignored his production. But to see a guy that had 396 yards receiving and have 200 fantasy points is insane and hilarious. All right, now to the actual roster. I like this roster. I do think it is starting to show a little bit of its age, or at least will in the near future. getting a running back is going to be a wise thing. I don't know how productive Kamara will be going forward, and Taylor is he going to be? Oh, yeah, he just turned 27 yesterday. So he'll at least play out his next season at age 27. So you can still be optimistic, at least for a year or two. Yeah, the defensive side is going to need a little bit of retooling. I'm not sure if Harold Landry is going to keep being the stud that he was for New England this year. Onyemata and Hill are probably getting up there in age, somewhere in the 30s. It's still a good roster, though. And then what did you say as far as draft capital? Functional? Yeah, nothing.
27th.
Oh, yeah. So this is going to be a little bit of a... This is going to have to be a very creative retooling. I think all of us don't really view Stroud as the superstar that he was, let's call it 2 years ago. So breaking him down just doesn't feel like a doable thing anymore unless you're going to a massive downgrade at quarterback. Yeah, I think it's just getting creative, maybe moving off of somebody like Kittle since you already have Freiermuth. It's gonna be it's either gonna be some work or just run it back the exact same way it is, and just whatever the result is, it is what it is, and you look forward to next year when you have draft picks, or well, when you at least get draft picks for the upcoming off season.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's going to be the question is, some of those pieces are going to be tougher to get maximum value for right now. So do you sell, I mean, not even low on some pieces, but do you sell low? Do you hold and hope for the best, diamond hands, not weak hands? Or are there pivots in there, like one or two? Like, what does Jonathan Taylor pull back right now? Does he pull back enough of it, enough assets because of the 350 points he still scored this year, or are people scared off by his heavy usage the last couple of years? Like 310 rushes, almost 1,600 yards, 18 touchdowns rushing, plus another 365 yards in the air and 2 touchdowns. I mean, guy touched the ball 350 times this year. He's 27 years old. He had a lot of usage in college. He's absolutely a premium asset in redraft leagues, but the question has to become, at what point does volume catch up to him? Father time's undefeated, but 350 points is 350 points.
Yeah, I guess that's what I was getting at. Maybe I probably just didn't vocalize it properly. But like a lot of these players, you can't conceivably like get rid of without just a massive decrease as far as points and value from your team. Like Jonathan Taylor holds more value being a rostered asset to the Jets than he does like on the trade market, because like what's Taylor going to bring in at that point? I would compare him to the past, let's call it 2 years of CMC trades, like a mid to late first, we'll call it 121, and then maybe if you get lucky you could get a third on top of it. So it's like, sure, you could get that, but then that first round pick's going to go out and buy you another running back to replace Taylor. It's not going to be as good. And then you're stuck with a third round pick to get you a mildly productive linebacker. So like a lot of the studs on his team have kind of like passed that window of being like valuable, or just to the point where you can't really extract a replaceable amount of value from it. George Kittle's one of those unique ones where he's just perpetually a top 5 tight end. So, like, I don't know, get rid of him for a first and a fourth, maybe. You know, use that first to go buy another, call it like tight end 18, whoever it may be. You trade that first for that tight end and maybe a third round pick, and then you have a third and a fourth to go buy some depth pieces. Well, getting slightly younger, but like I don't see a lot of places where you can get off of off of where Jets can get off of their premium players and get something comparable plus.
Yep, it's going to be challenging. So that's why it's he's got to find a way to get space. He's got to pivot off some of these players to maintain a position. It's going to be tough to do everything. First mover advantage is going to be critical for him.
And now
All
I
right.
would
Go ahead.
no, one more thing. I would say maybe he's the type of guy that is the other part of a 2-for-1. Like, he's the one that gives up the two pieces to get younger and better. So, like, a sense where he gives up Diggs and, I don't know, one of the productive cornerbacks for maybe a younger, productive wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a lot of those aging pieces that he bought. It's going to be tough to see like what. We'll go to the trades here in a second. Here, there were, I'd say, 5 really of note since last night. So we'll touch on those. But I mean, they were large enough that they probably warrant some decent discussion. But one of them was Devontae Adams going for a intriguing quarterback, a we'll call it buster running back, but depth guy, and then 2 third-round picks. And Adams was what, a 300-point receiver this year? Sorry, 225-point receiver, and that's including him not having some great weeks or sitting a couple of weeks. So, what is if that's what you're getting for Devontae Adams? Like, are you getting a third for Kamara? Are you getting, something else interesting for Diggs? It's tough.
Right. Yep, I agree. All right, now you've said it. Trades.
All right.
On my mind.
5 trades since last night. Saints gets the gold star for activity. Post pod really kicked it off there as we were sending some ideas around. Ended up making one with the Bears. Burrow, Braylon Allen, Caleb Johnson, and Brandon Ayuk for J.J. McCarthy, Saquon Barkley, and Marvin Harrison Jr. Bears gets Burrow, who he's a big fan of. I think as a Bengals fan, so happy to pick him up. And then a couple of, I'd say, undervalued pieces in Allen, Johnson, and Ayuk. And then I get a couple of guys who fit the mold of my team of disappointments from last year that I'm hoping bounce back into next year. Of JJ McCarthy, who everyone had some high hopes for, and he had some flashes of some money throws throughout the year, but really has to grow into that position. Saquon Barkley, who coming off a really fantastic year last year and had a better year than I think people realize. 225 points at the position. Nothing as crazy as last year, but hoping for a chance that he continues to show his prowess again next year as the Eagles figure it all out. And then Marvin Harrison Jr. Look, love the player. I hope it'd be great if he returned on his promise to what he had in the league, but at this point, I'll take him for what he is. And in fantasy, that's probably a wide receiver too when he's healthy. And he was dealing with some issues this year. I think they'll figure out the quarterback position in Arizona and get him a few more targets next year, and some quality targets with either Brissett or with whoever they bring in there to really carry the load. So I feel good about it. But hey, Burrow is a primetime name and carries a primetime price tag for it.
Yeah. I don't know. I like this trade. I think it was a fantastic move for both parties. Bears no longer has to look for a quarterback for the foreseeable future and can focus on just improving the rest of his roster. He's proven time and time again over the past let's call it 3 seasons he can turn nothing into something, especially at those skill positions. He can always find a usable group of players in there. So just for the convenience of not having to go out and find a quarterback every season, I'm thrilled for him. For you, it gets off of Burrow and get you a couple of pieces that are a little bit more movable, I guess you could say, while getting off of a couple of players that you gambled on and just didn't necessarily see your return on. I really like the idea of picking up Marv at the value that he is now. He's a good player. At some point, he's going to figure it out. He definitely has the workload to get those opportunities to figure it out. So I I think highly of him. I think that he'll do something eventually, and who knows? In a year or two, he basically may be worth Burrow himself. So that's a great gamble on your part.
Yeah, I mean that's we're doing gambling on stuff still, so all good. Looking at the next trade here, Lions was trying to move off of Malik Willis, able to do so for 2 fourth-round picks. I think a lot of us were surprised at the price tag, considering that the Packers front office and coaches are in high demand this offseason. Think that he's going to get a starting job someplace. But since one of those years, his 2 years left, is a fifth-year option as a former first-round pick, that is not going to be cheap. And that becomes a much different kind of gamble, going from a $2 million gamble to a $17 million gamble. So, that lowers the price tag, unfortunately. Lions still got what he could for him. And I think it's a great roll of the dice by the Buccaneers. I think he definitely will be in the competition for a starting job someplace. Might not get a lot of starts, but for 2 fourths, that's not the worst way to do it, especially if you have the cap space to really see that through.
Yeah, I thought that was a fantastic deal. It's a win for the Bucks. I think there's a line of us that basically would have said I would have paid more. So I don't know if that's a sign of a good trade or a bad trade, but I think it was fine. I think it was pretty acceptable value, or maybe slightly less than what we would have anticipated, but fine.
Yep. And then again, Saints roll out the rest of the day. We'll handle the easy one early. Devontae Adams for Tanner McKee, Roschon Johnson, and 2/3 and 27. The Colts and the Giants. Again, I think Saints were trying to get around a second-round valuation for Adams, if not better. And depending on what you think of Tanner McKee, that probably gets you right there. Roschon, he was able to flip for his 2026 fifth-round pick back with the Chiefs. But the big trade of the day is Giants moving off of Caleb Williams and Tyler Bagent, as well as Ray Davis, to pick back up Joe Milton, Dak Prescott, Jalen Coker, Parker Washington, and the Rams second this year, which I think is the Rams missed the playoff. That's probably in like the teens. So it's, I think, a top, just the end of the top 50 draft pick on top of everything else there. But hey, Caleb showed out in the playoffs. If you want a cheap young quarterback for a couple more years, that looks like he's surrounded by a ton of weapons. That's not a bad trade to make. And hey, Coker and Washington were real hot commodities at the end of this year, but both have real draft capital ahead of them at the positions that they're in. Probably productive players, but likely depth, if anything. So you're trading a quarterback who may not be as solid in his position, is a lot more expensive, to depth receivers and a top 50 pick to get one of those quarterbacks. And oh, by the way, he's probably the cheapest of those, think that's a great deal for both sides involved. Giants gets deeper and gives him some more optionality. Saints consolidates and gets one of those blue chip pieces he likes to build around.
Yeah. So I thought this was a little bit low for Caleb's value. I do think Caleb definitely proved that he belongs. He's a top 10 quarterback in fantasy. He will probably maintain being a top 10 quarterback. I would have expected, let's call it an aging quarterback, a handful of lesser pieces, and maybe a first round pick. You could debate the value of Parker Washington, but I don't see him as more than like a very late second, if not a third round pick as far as value. So that doesn't necessarily get me to the aging quarterback and first round pick like assessment that I would put on Caleb. It's fine. I don't think Giants walks away and feels like he lost value, and I think the Saints are probably thrilled with being able to make this trade happen. You know, it's a fine trade.
Yeah, I mean, that's what both sides wanted to do. Giants wanted to break a piece down. I think he wants to consolidate because he likes to fluctuate like that. And until next season, Parker Washington is getting some people thinking that he's going to be ahead of Travis Hunter and Brian Thomas Jr. on that depth chart. And again, we'll see what happens in the offseason. If Thomas Jr. gets traded because they want Hunter to play more defense and Parker Washington to play more of the lead receiver position because he played so well there, like that will speak volumes. If neither of those guys get traded and they're still showing up to camp as the top two guys, hey, Washington's going to fall back to that third or fourth position. But anyways, good start. I think we can do better though. I think we can get 10 tonight into tomorrow if we really stick to it here. And I'm not talking about little dinky dunk trades. I mean, let's really get into moving some things and consolidating some things. We made some suggestions in our podcast so far, so those are good things to build upon. But we've had a couple of folks tuning in here as well, so hopefully this is getting those creative juices flowing. Some folks have been coming in and off of the website too. I've seen some activity here throughout the podcast. We've been going about 80 minutes here. In the last 80 minutes, I think I've seen about a third of the league online. So let's do something with it, guys. Let's get crazy. Let's have a little bit of fun.
Yeah.
Any closing thoughts here, RJ?
No, some of you guys need to hop on and participate in these things too. It can't just be our wild ramblings week in, week out, although I do enjoy it.
Yeah, it's a nice way to just kind of get the thoughts out too and kind of reestablish a thought process in this. Again, there was definitely some rust as I was going through this last night, so I'll have to go team by team and see if I can go around the league again still, or if that skill set is gone vestigial for me. But that's a big word, and it's time to get some small actions here. So thanks for listening, and hey, who knows? We get over 10 trades tonight of substance. Maybe we go again tomorrow. Who knows?